Hey, welcome back to another Black City Coffee vlog. In this video, I want to talk about some more thoughts about this probe hullabaloo. Okay, so a couple things, okay? Observations. Roast how you want to roast. I don't care. This is how I'm just showing you what I'm doing, all right? So when I told Mike over at Clatch, all right, when he was dissecting how I was roasting, I told him that I reached first crack at 372. Which was off from the literature, the one book really. He didn't freak out, okay? So right there, I was like, okay, I was expecting a freak out. And he didn't freak out because he knows how roasters work. And every roaster works a little differently, okay? How they're made, what kind of probes they use, what kind of burners they have, how much power they have. Is it gas? Is it electric? Is it drum? Is it air? Okay, so with all the types of how the thing is made, it's going to come with its own limitations, pros and cons to that machine. Yes? So with that being said, you're going to hit certain markers of the roast, maybe a little differently. Okay? And I think that information just was not there when I was learning how to roast. Or maybe it was, but I didn't read deep into the forums enough, because this education is like, or this sort of knowledge is sort of like hidden beneath a lot of layers of this and that and these philosophies versus this philosophy. So I'm trying to help somebody who maybe was confused like me. You know, it's still, I was confused yesterday, so the confusion doesn't really stop, and it's cool. It's fine to be confused. It's fine to ask questions, and that's why we have things like this, so we can talk about it. Okay. The thickness of the probe does a couple of things. It looks like the smaller the probe, the more sensitive it is, and the thicker the probe, the more noise you can potentially have in the data. So it can like present some sort of like weird static that just comes from the nature of how it's made and what it's trying to detect and read. And static looks like those little like zzz, that's noise or that's static, right? So that maybe can look like, instead of a curve, it's like bzzz, still in a curved format, but more like that, okay? So if you look at my roast curves, I take off all the smoothing on it because I want to just see how sensitive it is, and I want to know exactly where I'm going with my ROR. That's why I take out all the smoothing. It looks pretty smoothed out here when I share it to you guys and when I look back at it, but when I'm actually roasting, I see that guy going like trending down for sure, but it's like beep 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 boop 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 because it's calculating, right? And it's not smoothing out those hard peaks and valleys, okay? And that's fine because I want to know. I'm like, tell me the truth. don't just put, you know, makeup all over it and then I don't see anything and it looks perfect and I don't really see where I can improve. Like, tell me the details, okay? So that's kind of like, I'm sure it does more. You know, but that's kind of the gist with the thickness and the thickness and the thinness of these probes and yeah, okay. As I was saying in the last video, you know, 30 peak ROR, 40 peak ROR, 21 peak ROR. It's just a reading, and it doesn't necessarily mean, like, if you're just hung up on that one metric in your whole roast, it's a little misguided. Because what does it tell you? It tells you, did you turn around fast or slow in terms of the whole goal of the roast? It's always within context. Whenever you're talking about one metric of the roast, you have to then consider, you have to go, this is the metric, 40 ROR, with consideration of the roast, the goal of the roast. Okay, light roast at 10 minutes, light roast at 9 minutes, you know, etc. You know, fill in the blank for your specific need, okay? When you're new, I'm sure this is not making sense. I'm sorry. Hang in there. Just hang in there, okay? Maybe I think what people are looking for is, what are the markers for successful, what are the markers for a successful roast? But you really have to be clear with yourself and you go, well, what does successful mean for this pre-blended Omni roast? Successful for this pre-blend Omni roast is going to be different than, I don't know, let's just pick one here. This sugarcane EA decaf from Colombia. It's going to be different, right? If you didn't know it was going to be different, well, there you go. It's going to be different. Or fill in the blank. Some other high density, high elevation Ethiopian coffee. That's going to be a different roast, right? Okay, cool. So everything's relative to the goal of the roast, including your peak ROR, the type of like probe you have, the type of machine you have, like your machine, what it can do, whether it's got a 5mm probe or a 3mm probe. It's going to be able to roast good coffee if you can recognize when to make the right decisions at the roaster, no matter what kind of measuring instruments you have. Or even if you don't have this stuff. People are making dope coffee without even having all this fancy equipment, right? So it's like a good golfer. Let's use the golfing metaphor. It's like a good golfer using, I don't know, Walmart clubs. Still probably going to hit way better than me with expensive clubs. That is for sure. Same idea, same principle, I think, I believe. Relative is relative, okay? Another way I like to think about probes, you know, what's the deal? Like, should I get it or what, Meg? Like what? I'm not giving like a recommendation like go buy this or go buy that. No. Hopefully when you watch my vlogs, you're like, oh, that gives me an idea. Let me go test something for myself and then make a decision for myself. Okay? I want to empower you to make the best decision for yourself based on your situation, your roaster, your goals, all that stuff. So with probes, I think what the 3mm probe does, because we see this sort of roast curve being used a lot and being touted as like the standard. Okay, whatever. So I think the focus here just needs to be refined a little bit. And I'm not, I'm not squashing it or I'm not talking smack or anything. It was just like, what? I'm confused. I roasted the same way, but I'm getting these readings now. So I've always been roasting it the way that it's supposed to be roasted, but for some reason, just because of the probe, I believe that it wasn't up to snuff. That seemed a little weird to me. So the probes help us speak the same language. Even though we're maybe speaking the same language, maybe the interpretation of the translation from like my Mill City 1K to maybe like, I don't know, let's call it Dietrich 1K, right? Or Gießen 1K. Maybe the interpretation between the roast curves and the data, because maybe I use RoastPath and you use Cropster, or I use RoastPath and you use Artisan, right? Maybe that interpretation of the data has some play. The translation is not like word for word, okay? Like let's take from like English to like, let's take a Tagalog word, right? Because I'm Filipino. Let's take one word there, okay? Or from Tagalog to English is like, let's choose a word like taco mata. Taco mata. You know, as I used to hear this when I was a kid, is like when you stuff your face, you stuff your mouth with like too much food, and now you're like almost gonna like spit it out because your eyes were too big for your stomach, right? So if we translate taco mata to English, it becomes greedy eyes. I had to look that up because I'm so American. Greedy eyes, okay? Greedy eyes, what does that mean? Our English phrase is, eyes are too big for my stomach. I stuffed my mouth too much and now I'm gonna like, right? So the translation between English to Tagalog, there's some play. So yeah, we have some play in the interpretation. That's all it is. That's all it is we have some play in the interpretation. Considering all that is true, and we yes and, we go, yes, My probe is 5 millimeters, and yes, I hit first crack at 372, and I'm still roasting okay coffee, and my customers still like it. So in the end, Meg, is it worth it to upgrade your probe? I don't think so. I don't think so. If you know what you're already, like if you know that you can roast the coffee and you can taste it and you go, I like it, my customers like it, and you can, and you're doing that with your 5 millimeter probe, I seriously think you don't need to upgrade. It's not even an upgrade. It's like I don't think you need to replace it. Now, will I change my opinion later? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I think it's, I mean, the only thing constant is change. So I could change my opinion. Right now, I think I would have been fine not changing it. So I get it. For people who are like, yeah, I just want to hit these numbers and like mentally know. Maybe the probe is like a placebo effect. And I'm totally down because placebo is real as hell, right? So if it's a placebo and it makes me feel better as a roaster to know that I'm hitting these certain things and like, what do we really actually know what the temperature is of these beans? You can't probe the bean, right? You can't actually go in here and be like, what's the temperature? You can't do that. So it's all kind of a smart guess, you know, a most likely guess. So, I don't know. I don't think you have to do it, bottom line. If you stick with your 5 millimeter probe, I think it's fine as long as you cup the coffee. You cup it and you know what you're looking for and you can taste it and diagnose it and then go to the roaster and make decisions to make the coffee the way that you want it to taste. I think that's totally fine. I mean, I was totally down for this experiment. I suspected this as much, you know, that I would upgrade this and then like it would just give me better readings or more accurate readings. It should be like readings that speak a certain language. There must be a better way of saying it. Accurate. I don't know if that's the best word. What word would you use? Would you use the word accurate? I'm blanking. I'm still going to look at the coffee as I'm roasting it and see what the development is when I pull the trier and I'm like, okay, they've puffed up to a level that I like. And when I look at the bean temperature, it's reaching, you know, some low 400 number. Okay. You know, everything, all the boxes are being checked, not just this one thing of like I had a high peak ROR and da 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 da. Like there's so many components to a good roast. And I'm not saying that I perfect it at all, you know. I'm just saying that we're focusing maybe too much on things like probes and things like that. And it probably snowballed out of control where it was like you were asking a guy for his advice and he was only familiar and comfortable giving answers about a machine that uses a 3 millimeter probe. So you couldn't speak the same language, right? So if you upgrade or replace your probe with his same probe size, now you can speak the same language. But it didn't mean that your coffee was bad before, if you were on a 5 millimeter like mine, okay? It just means that you're speaking the same language. But know that when you're speaking the same language, there's still some play in the translation. I don't know. Okay, well, I hope that's clearer. I know, I'm not the best at it, at explaining. I'm just sharing what I'm going through. You know, just a humble home roaster. I don't know anything. I'm learning. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye.